I never imagined that the sound of my own front door opening would make my blood run cold. I was standing in what should have been my sanctuary, my dream home that I had spent 3 years designing and building with my own hands. Every corner, every detail, every carefully chosen material represented my journey from the broken girl my family had discarded to the successful architect I had become. The morning sun was streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows I had positioned perfectly to catch the first light, and I was about to experience my first sunrise in the home that was supposed to be mine alone. Then the door burst open. My mother, Victoria Vance, swept in with the entitled confidence of someone who believed the world owed her everything. Her perfectly coiffed silver hair caught the light as she gestured grandly to the woman behind her, Tiffany, my brother Jackson's wife, and 2 other women I recognized as members of her social circle. "And here, dear Tiffany, is the house I bought for you and Jackson," my mother announced with a triumphant smile. "Perfect for starting your new life together, don't you think?" The words hit me like a physical blow. I stood frozen in the shadow of the staircase I had designed myself, listening to my mother claim ownership of everything I had worked for, everything I had sacrificed for, everything that represented my independence and freedom. My hands began to shake as the full implications of what I was hearing sank in. This wasn't just a casual visit or a misunderstanding. This was a calculated lie, delivered with the casual cruelty that had defined my relationship with my family for as long as I could remember. I stepped out from behind the staircase, my voice cutting through their chatter like a blade. "What the hell are you doing in my house?" The shock on my mother's face was quickly replaced by that familiar look of disdain. She straightened her shoulders and smiled, that cold, practiced smile that had intimidated me for most of my life. "Oh, Eleanor, I didn't realize you were here. I was just showing Tiffany around the family house." Tiffany, resplendent in her designer clothes and fake sympathy, looked me up and down with barely concealed contempt. "Eleanor, you look stressed. Maybe you should take a break while we finish the tour. This is such a generous gift from Mother Vance." The casual way she dismissed me in my own home, the way she referred to my mother as if she had more claim to this family than I did, ignited something in me that had been dormant for too long. For 32 years, I had endured my family's manipulation, their constant reminders that I was the disappointing daughter, the one who never quite measured up to their expectations. I had watched them lavish attention and resources on Jackson while treating me like an afterthought, a convenient tool to be used when they needed something. But this house was different. This house was mine. "This house belongs to me," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "Every brick, every beam, every dollar that built it came from my work, my savings, my dreams." My mother's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Don't be ridiculous, Eleanor. Have you forgotten who raised you? Who gave you the foundation to achieve anything? You're being ungrateful and frankly embarrassing yourself in front of our guests." The gaslighting was so familiar, so automatic, that for a moment I almost believed her. Almost. But then I looked around at the home I had created, at the architectural drawings still spread across my dining table, at the receipts and contracts that proved every single payment had come from my account, and I realized that this was my line in the sand. Without another word, I pulled out my phone and called a locksmith. That evening, as I watched the locksmith install new deadbolts and a state-of-the-art security system with cameras, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: control. For the first time in my adult life, I was taking action instead of simply enduring. The phone calls started before the locksmith had even left. My mother's voice, shrill with indignation, filled my voicemail. "Eleanor, open this door immediately. This is family property, and you have no right to lock us out." Jackson's messages were filled with threats about legal action. Tiffany's texts accused me of being selfish and mentally unstable. But I didn't respond. Instead, I watched the security cameras as my family gathered outside my home like vultures, testing windows and trying to find another way in. The sight of my mother with bolt cutters, actually attempting to break into my home while Jackson and Tiffany stood guard, was both horrifying and liberating. Finally, I had evidence of who they really were. I forwarded every message, every threatening voicemail, and all the security footage to Daniel Sterling, the attorney who had helped me with the house purchase. His response was immediate and reassuring. "This is illegal trespassing and attempted breaking and entering. We have enough evidence to file for a restraining order." The restraining order was just the beginning. 3 days later, I received a summons that made my blood pressure spike. Victoria Vance versus Eleanor Vance. My mother was suing me for partial ownership of my house, claiming she had made significant financial contributions to the purchase. The legal document was filled with lies so brazen they took my breath away. While I was reeling from the lawsuit, Jackson and Tiffany launched a coordinated attack on social media. They painted me as an ungrateful daughter who had stolen from my elderly parents, a mentally unstable woman who was holding family property hostage. The posts were carefully crafted to generate maximum sympathy for them and maximum hatred for me. Watching my extended family and family friends share these lies, Seeing people I had known for years turn against me based on carefully constructed falsehoods was devastating, but it was also clarifying. It showed me exactly who my family really was and what they were capable of. That's when Sarah Jenkins, my elderly neighbor, knocked on my door. Sarah was 78, sharp as a tack, and had been watching the drama unfold from her kitchen window for weeks. "Honey," she said, settling into my living room with a cup of tea, "I've got some things you need to know." Sarah had been documenting my family's behavior for weeks. She had videos of my mother and Tiffany bringing furniture to my house while I was at work, acting as if they owned the place. She had recorded conversations where my mother bragged to her friends about how she was finally getting something worthwhile out of that ungrateful daughter. "Your mother told Mrs. Patterson from down the street that you were just a means to an end," Sarah said, her voice gentle but firm. "She said you built this house, but she deserved to live in it because she raised you." The recordings Sarah shared with Daniel were devastating. My mother's voice, clear and unmistakable, discussing her plans to force me out of my own home. Tiffany laughing about how easy it would be to manipulate me because I had always been the weak one in the family. Daniel immediately incorporated Sarah's evidence into our defense strategy, but I wanted to do more than just defend myself. I wanted the truth to come out. That's when I decided to hold a press conference. Mark Davies, an investigative journalist I had worked with on a sustainable housing project 2 years earlier, had been following the story through social media. When I reached out to him, he was immediately interested in digging deeper. "Eleanor," he said during our first interview, "this isn't just about a house, is it? This is about a pattern of abuse that's been going on for decades." He was right. As Mark investigated, we uncovered a long history of my family's manipulation and exploitation. Former family friends came forward with stories of how my parents had used my achievements to enhance their own social status while simultaneously belittling me in private. Colleagues shared instances where my mother had taken credit for my professional successes at social gatherings. Most damaging was Mark's discovery that Jackson and Tiffany had been involved in several small-scale fraud schemes, using the family name and reputation to scam money from acquaintances and local businesses. The night before Mark's first article was published, Jackson and Tiffany decided to escalate things. I was reviewing legal documents when my security system alarm pierced the quiet of my home. The cameras showed Jackson with a hammer, systematically trying to break the windows on the backside of my house, while Tiffany held a flashlight and acted as lookout. I called the police and Daniel simultaneously, my hands shaking as I recorded everything on my phone. This wasn't just harassment anymore, this was a felony. The police arrived within minutes, catching Jackson and Tiffany in the act. Jackson still had the hammer in his hand when they handcuffed him. Tiffany tried to claim they were just trying to retrieve family belongings, but the security footage told a different story. At the police station, Tiffany attempted to flip the narrative, insisting that I had set them up and that they were the real victims. But between the video evidence, the restraining order violations, and the discovery of their other fraudulent activities, their credibility was shot. The trial was a media sensation, thanks to Mark's investigative series that had been running in the local paper for weeks. The courtroom was packed as Daniel systematically destroyed every lie my family had constructed. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records showing that every penny used to purchase and build the house had come from my accounts. The original architectural drawings in my handwriting. Contractors who testified that I had been the sole point of contact for the entire project. Sarah's recordings that proved my mother's true intentions. When my mother took the stand, her performance was masterful but ultimately futile. She painted herself as a loving mother who had only wanted to help her daughter, who had been confused about the ownership arrangements. She claimed that her statements on Sarah's recordings had been taken out of context, but Daniel was relentless in his cross-examination. He played recording after recording, showed document after document, painted a picture of a woman who had spent decades manipulating and exploiting her own daughter. The moment that broke the case wide open was when Daniel presented evidence of my family's financial situation. Despite their wealthy facade, my parents were drowning in debt. Jackson's business ventures had failed spectacularly. Tiffany's spending habits had drained their savings. They hadn't wanted my house out of love or family solidarity. They had wanted it because they were desperate. Mark's final article, published the day of the verdict, was a comprehensive exposé that destroyed my family's reputation completely. The headline read, "The Vance Family: How a Respected Local Family Used Lies, Manipulation, and Fraud to Exploit Their Own Daughter." The public reaction was swift and brutal. My mother's social circle abandoned her. Jackson's remaining business contacts severed ties. Tiffany found herself persona non grata in the social climbing circles she had worked so hard to infiltrate. When the judge read the verdict, complete vindication for me, dismissal of all my mother's claims, and criminal charges for Jackson and Tiffany, felt something I hadn't experienced in decades: justice. But the real confrontation came 3 days later, when my parents showed up at my door one final time. My mother looked older than I had ever seen her. Her perfect composure finally cracked. My father, always weak, stood behind her like a shadow. "Eleanor," my mother said, and for the first time in my life, her voice shook. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I just wanted what was best for you children." Even in her apology, she couldn't be honest. She couldn't admit that this had never been about what was best for Mitt, had always been about what was best for her. I looked at this woman who had given birth to me but had never truly been my mother, who had spent 32 years teaching me that love was conditional, that family was a weapon to be used against you, that I was valuable only for what I could provide. "You were never sorry when you were humiliating me in front of your friends," I said, my voice calm and steady. "You were never sorry when you ignored my achievements while celebrating Jackson's failures as if they were triumphs. You were never sorry when you made it clear that I was the disappointment, the burden, the child you wished you didn't have." My father stepped forward, his face pleading. "Eleanor, we're family. Families forgive each other. We can work through this." I looked at him, this man who had stood by and watched his wife destroy his daughter's self-worth for decades, who had chosen the path of least resistance over protecting his child. "Dad, you made your choice a long time ago. Every time you stood silently while she tore me down, you chose her over me. Every time you told me to keep the peace while she was destroying my peace, you chose her over me." I gestured toward the home I had built with my own hands, my own dreams, my own refusal to be crushed by their toxic love. "This house represents the last ray of sunshine in my life, the part of me that you couldn't destroy, couldn't manipulate, couldn't take away. It will never belong to you because I will never belong to you again." I opened the door and pointed toward their car. "Please leave, and don't come back." They left without another word, two people who had lost everything through their own greed and cruelty. As I watched their car disappear down my driveway, I felt the weight of 32 years of manipulation and abuse lifting from my shoulders. I had done more than win a legal battle. I had reclaimed my life, my worth, my right to exist without constantly proving I deserved love and respect. The afternoon sun was streaming through my living room windows, the same light that had been there the morning this all began. But now it felt different. It felt like a promise rather than a memory, like hope rather than defiance. I had built more than a house. I had built a life where I was the architect of my own happiness, where the only approval that mattered was my own, where love was freely given rather than earned through sacrifice and submission. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah next door. "Proud of you, dear. Would you like to come over for dinner tonight?" I smiled, realizing that I had found something my biological family had never given me, a chosen family built on respect, kindness, and genuine care. That evening, as I sat in Sarah's cozy kitchen sharing stories and laughter, I understood that the girl who had spent decades trying to earn love from people incapable of giving it was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her worth, who had boundaries that couldn't be crossed, who had learned that the most important relationship she would ever have was the one with herself. The house stood behind us in the darkness, lit from within, a beacon of everything I had fought to become. My last ray of sunshine had become my dawn, and the future stretched ahead of me, finally, beautifully, mine,